Growing up, we are told many stories with cryptic meanings. One that always stood out to me is the story of the genie that grants you wishes. There are many versions of the story, but in the one that I'm the most familiar with, the genie grants 3 wishes to the person who finds the magical object that contains it. But the thing about genies that always annoyed me as a kid was that while they would give you what you wanted, it would often lead to unforeseen consequences. In some cultures, this story serves as a warning: be careful what you wish for, because it might become true. Perhaps this story was an attempt to stop humans from pursuing wild fantasies that might look attractive now, but would lead to fatal consequences if achieved. But the thing about humanity is that we are dreamers. We dream about doing and building amazing things so that we can live more comfortably. And who can blame us? We all experience big and small problems in our lives, and it seems like a natural instinct to overcome the harshness of nature by building tools that can help us overcome these problems. It is this instinct that has made us spend probably millions of hours collectively on developing medicine and inventing tools to help us survive. It also seems like humanity has an urge to build things that can help us beyond survival. Libraries have, for example, existed for thousands of years, and their existence indicates that some of our ancestors dreamed of a world with access to all information that humanity has ever produced. Perhaps, if they had found a genie, they would wish for some oracle that could instantly tell them the answers to any questions that they might have. Other people might have wished for something that could entertain them in all the hours they did not know what to do with. Over the last few decades, humanity has made huge advances in both of these areas. In fact, some people estimated that it would take more than 10,000 years to watch all the content there is on YouTube, even if no new content was ever uploaded. This is more than enough to last a lifetime for the average person. And with the advances of search engines and AI, it is now possible to discover more knowledge than what our ancestors could have ever dreamed of. Despite this, it seems like the old stories of the genie might be onto something. Because while we have gotten AI girlfriends and infinite scrolling to keep us entertained, it seems like something is off. I don't know about you, but to me, advances in technology used to excite me because it felt like we were getting closer to some sort of ideal world. I thought giving everyone access to something that might as well be all knowledge ever produced by humanity, in the form of the internet, would lead to such an increased education level that we would have figured everything out. How to end poverty for everyone, how to restore the environment, and how to live healthier and wiser lives. For a while it felt like we were able to develop technology in a way that was positive. Let's just take video games for example. While ranking video games by looking at reviews is fundamentally flawed because it attempts to put numbers on something that has to be experienced. It is still interesting that according to Metacritic, the best video game of all time came out in 1998. Graphics were nowhere near today's standards, and the game studios back then also did not have nearly the same budgets as games have today. Still, these old games simply delivered the best possible experience for the player and managed to do so by focusing on telling beautiful stories and having fun gameplay. And this wasn't just true for big budget games. Even when the internet became a thing, we got Flash games. As I mentioned in my video about Flash, this was a time where creativity seemingly hit an all-time high. Every couple of weeks, we would get these new innovative games that pushed the boundary of what was possible, not only technologically, but also creatively. The early pioneers of Flash had plenty of taste and simply did their best to use that taste to provide some fun things to do with your friends. But these days, most games that are made, both for smartphones and for consoles, seems to be objectively worse. They are not optimized for fun, but rather for increasing the amount of time you will spend in the game. And if you're not willing to spend money, they are trying to use psychological tricks to keep you addicted to the games, so that they can show you more advertisements. Similarly, a company like Airbnb used technology to actually connect people. They provided a way for you to stay together with other people in their homes, so you could experience the world like a local. It might have been a bit awkward to stay with strangers, but this awkwardness is part of the human experience and provided a more interesting vacation than simply staying at a hotel. But like many other things would change over time as the service got more optimized to allow you to stay at other people's homes but without them being there. Because the messiness of human interaction was too much for some, and Airbnb found better ways to optimize their website for the one thing that really matters: money. When talking about what went wrong, it is very easy to blame everything on money and greed. However, money is not something new, which begs the question: If money is the reason why everything seems to be so bad now, how come money didn't stop people back in the days from making great things? To answer this question, we might want to look at the internet. Back when Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet, he made a very important decision to make the internet free for everyone. The goal seemed clear enough. If the internet was free for everyone, it would unlock a wave of creativity, innovation and collaboration. And in many ways it did. But it also created a problem that nobody quite anticipated. You see, when you sell a physical product, you maximize the profits by setting the price that perfectly balances the marginal revenue and cost. But when you make something digital, the marginal cost of serving one more user is basically zero. Adding your 10th user costs the same as adding your 10th million user. Which sounds great, except it means that the only thing that really matters is scale. And when scale is the only thing that matters, it very often leads to network effects. The platforms with the most users becomes the most valuable because it has the most users, which attracts even more users, which makes them even more valuable. It's a winner-takes-all game. And not only does it lead to monopolies, which means that the companies no longer have a strong incentive to innovate, it also creates another problem. Because if your product is free, how do you make money at scale? It didn't take long for the first big internet companies to figure out that advertisements were the best way to answer this question. This seemingly small decision to offer your product for free and monetize it with advertisements will go on to change the internet forever. And now that we think about it, it also changed us. Because once your business model is advertising, the users are no longer your end customer. They instead become your inventory that you sell to advertisers who are the real customers. When attention and time spent is the most important resource for a company, they stop optimizing for what the users say that they want, and instead start optimizing for what keeps them staying for longer and what keeps them coming back. This phenomenon could also be experienced before the internet. For example with tabloid newspapers, which focused on publishing sensational topics like celebrity news, at a low cost supported by advertising. But what made the internet so special is the fact that the users are leaving much more data compared to, let's say, physical tabloid newspapers. This data can be analyzed and used to train algorithms that make it even better at predicting what to show. And with the rise of user-generated content, the platforms have a practically inexhaustible catalog of content to show. As long as the algorithms keep improving and the content keeps coming in, the machine is only getting better. But how can the platform guarantee that the users want to participate to create this content? Well, they offer various incentives such as money, fame and likes. Some economists are of the opinion that once you start understanding incentives, it's the only thing that you can think of. And the thing about incentives is that once you start rewarding something that you measure, it is the only thing that you get. For example, back in around 1902 in Vietnam, they had a big problem with rats. And they eventually got the idea that they would pay citizens for every rat that they killed. And the only thing that they needed to claim the reward was to deliver a rat tail to the city officials. It didn't take long before the local population realized that instead of wandering down into the dark and stinky sewers to find and kill a rat, they could instead make small rat farms, let them breed, cut off their tails and claim the reward. This story shows what the economists have said. You get what you measure, nothing more, nothing less. In the same way, tech companies might actually be sincere when they claim that they want to make people's lives better. But the problem is that since it is incredibly difficult to measure, they instead rely on proxy metrics, such as how often the users come back and how long they spend. They use these metrics to incentivize their employees to make decisions that align with these goals, by giving them promotions and bonuses if they are able to do a good job at maximizing these metrics. But just like with the rats in Vietnam, once you start incentivizing people to do something, in this case maximizing how long users spend in your app, it is the only thing you get. But the weird thing is that in a way we asked for this. For all of human history, we had a big problem with scarcity. Not enough food, shelter, entertainment and options. The challenge was always to get more. So when the early modern technology came out, we were still hungry for things to spend our time on. And the companies delivered. They gave us more things to spend our time on. They gave us everything from AI girlfriends to infinite scrolling. For the first time in human history, the problem is no longer to get enough. It has become that we have too much of everything. We got too much food with too many calories, which has led to an obesity epidemic. We got too much stimulation, which arguably has led to a rise in depression and anxiety. and we got too many options, which leads to decision paralysis. Technology is like medicine, the dose makes the poison. If you take a little bit of medicine, it will cure you, but if you take too much, it kills you. In the same way, a little bit of technology genuinely makes lives better. But the same device that connects you to distant loved ones disconnect you from the person sitting across from you at dinner. And the same infinite access to entertainment that should give you something to do in your free time leaves you scrolling at 3 AM exhausted and empty. Back in the days, only kings had to practice self-restraint. For most humans throughout history, this was a luxury problem they had never had to think about. But today, this is something that almost the entire world is forced to think about. To get some sense of control back in their lives, some people have started to gravitate towards religion, while others swear to digital detox, intermittent fasting, or other strict diets. The common theme among these things is they offer strict rules for what you can and cannot do in a world that is otherwise pressuring you into more of everything. Unlike what some people might lead you to believe, it is not because these people are irrational or because they hate technology, but because they can't function in a world of unlimited choice. The natural conclusion to draw at this point is that companies are the root of all evil. It has now become well established that too much of everything is a bad thing, yet they still keep making the algorithms better and better to keep us hooked. But to be honest, if you were in charge of Instagram, would you kill Reels to free your users from being addicted? Most likely, most of the users would simply find other places to get the dopamine hits. And all you would be left with is a smaller user base and a lot of angry investors. In many ways, these companies are not imposing this on us. They are just offering what we are responding to. So while people are making books, blog posts, and YouTube videos explaining that we are tired of all of this, these companies are not going to change as long as people's actions are saying otherwise. It reminds me of the 2008 Pixar movie WALL-E. In the movie, we see a sad glimpse into a future where the remaining people are sitting in comfortable chairs being fed whatever they want while they are watching stuff on screens that are optimized for each person. They are unable to walk or to function in any way without the technology mediating the experience. It is impossible to know exactly how many people watched this movie, but the more than $500 million in box office sales indicates that this movie has been watched by many of us. I'm sure I was not the only one thinking that this was a dark vision of the future that I wanted to avoid. Yet, it seems like we're currently developing technology in a way that aligns very well with that future. These people were giving exactly what they wanted, just like we are. Infinite entertainment, zero friction, and perfect comfort. While many of us might think that dystopia looks like cooperation forcing us into chairs, it actually looks like corporations perfecting the chair until we choose to never leave. In the same way, we are currently consuming so much content from these apps, while they are perfecting the experience based on the data they collect from us. While they might not admit it, they have internal and external incentive structures that point in one direction, and that direction is the WALL-E future. The exact same idea applies to AI, by the way. We might have thought that a dystopian future looked like AI is taking over the world by forcing humans to do what it says. But I find it way more likely that AI takes over the world because we keep asking it to help us. Because it can be helpful. How should I handle this situation? How can I solve this problem? It infiltrates our society not by force, but by being more and more helpful until we would never consider not asking it for advice. This is just like the WALL-E chairs. Making a video on this topic and posting it to one of the biggest social media poses an interesting contradiction. On the one hand, making more content to this platform only contributes to the problem that I'm discussing. But on the other hand, it seems valuable to use the same tools that created the problem to help people understand it. And like many other people, we can use the great thinkers to help us understand the situation. The philosopher Martin Heidegger wrote about technology long before the internet, social media or smartphone existed. Yet somehow, his ideas describe our situation more clearly than most modern critics. He argued that the real danger of technology isn't that it manipulates us or distracts us. The real danger is that it quietly teaches us a new way of seeing the world. Heidegger believed that every era has its own lens, a default way of interpreting reality. In earlier times, people saw the world through the lens of religion or myth or nature. But in our modern era, technology has become the lens. And when technology becomes the lens, everything starts to look like a resource. something that exists to be optimized, measured, improved, extracted, or maximized. For example, when we see the forest in the context of the technology of a wood factory, the trees become a resource that we can extract value from. And in the same way, when tech companies look at us through the lens of their engagement metrics, we stop seeing people with lives and relationships and needs. We become daily active users, retention rates, and attention inventory. Not because they're evil, but because that is what the technological worldview does. It turns everything, including us, into something to be measured and optimized. Heidegger believed that the real danger is not that technology controls us. The real danger is that we stop noticing how deeply it shapes our understanding of ourselves, until the technological worldview becomes the only thing we are capable of imagining. A lot of us gets this weird feeling about AI and modern technology, and we seem to collectively hate social media companies, yet we use the services more than ever. I think that this is a clue that something deep inside of us is telling us that something is wrong. And while it feels natural to complain about the companies and the people producing the technology, perhaps what we need to do is to understand the forces at play so that we can break free from them. If there's something to be learned from the story of the genie and the 3 wishes, it is that we need to be careful what we wish for. But to be realistic, we can only really understand the consequences of our wishes when we see them become reality. We wished for infinite knowledge and entertainment to be instantaneously available to us, and we wished for it because we believed it would be a better future. We finally got to test that theory, and it made us miserable. But that's not necessarily a failure, that's actually information. Because by getting everything we ever asked for, we realized that this is not the future that we wanted. And once we realize this, we are forced to ask for something better. I believe we are entering a phase where we are no longer just asking what can we build and optimize, but instead we become more intentional and ask ourselves, what do we actually want? And in that case, maybe the big monopolies that take away our attention and sell it to advertisers were exactly what we needed. We needed them to realize that yes, we as humanity are able to set up structures in this world which produces an infinite amount of entertainment for us. But that is not the answer to our problems. The real lesson isn't that wishing is dangerous. It is that we don't actually know what we want until we get what we asked for. And only then are we able to wish for something better. Maybe next time we find a genie, we'll know not to wish for more, but for the wisdom to know when we have enough. But that is just my humble opinion. If you liked the video, it would mean the world to me if you wanted to subscribe. I currently have around 2,700 subscribers and each one of you means a lot. Thank you.